Well, hello again, friends. Welcome to Investment Immigration Conversations. I'm your host, Carolyn Lee, principal and founder of Carolyn Lee PLLC, a U.S. investment immigration law firm dedicated to helping clients build their future with investment immigration. And I have none other than my dear colleague, senior attorney Lindsay Schoonmaker with me.
Hi,
Lindsay.
thanks for having me join you today.
My pleasure. Thank you, as ever. Well, we have an action-packed session today, and this is an incredibly important topic, really. This is sort of the heart and soul of the EB-5 Reform and Integrity Act. And we've got a pretty high bar today. We're going to try to cover this important information, some key deadlines, some important fundamental concepts, and also some takeaways, practice pointers, and at the end, a word or two about our services that help regional centers stay compliant also. So a lot to cover, but with Lindsay, I can do anything. We must do a disclaimer because we're going to be covering some practical things that we do not want people to take as legal advice, for it is not legal advice. And the only legal advice that we give is to our clients. And our client-attorney relationship is only created by signed engagement letter. So please be advised of that important note. Now,
Back to the integrity fees.
Back to the integrity fees. Oh my gosh. Okay. So these are due. And so let's start talking about them. As ever, we want to talk about where is this from? Where's this requirement from? And it is from the statute. It's from the EB-5 Reform and Integrity Act of 2022, affectionately known as the RIA or RIA, subparagraph J. We're in 203B5J, the Integrity Fund. And it calls for an annual fee to be paid on October 1. And it also sets the amounts. The amounts are set at $20,000 for each regional center that's designated under the RIA, $10,000 if the regional center has 20 investors or fewer. And we're going to talk about how that number is counted. And for failure to pay, USCIS shall impose a reasonable penalty if the fee is not paid within 30 days of the due date of October 1, and shall terminate the regional center if the regional center does not pay within the 90 days after the due date. So that's the statute. We also want to look at the Federal Register notice that answers a lot of the questions that this sort of bare language in the statute raise. And we're going to just kind of cover some of the fundamentals, starting with the dates. They are due October 1. The portal is open, and we're going to talk about the specific instructions in just a few minutes. And you have until 30 days after the due date. Question, what date is that? Because there's mention and there's written stuff about October 30th versus the 31st. The language is within, and so the 30th is the last day that regional centers can pay without being subject to a late fee. So October 1 is the due date, but you've got until October 30th to pay. Now, what about this 90-day window beyond which the regional center becomes subject to termination? It is December 30th. If the fee is not paid by December 30th, then the regional center becomes subject to termination, and that is very clear. Okay. I do commend everyone to read the Federal Register notice because it's an easy read. It's not that technical, and it's super important. And everyone who is registered for this will get links to the sources that we're talking about today. by way of backdrop, because this has been so confusing, Lindsay, I want to just tell folks a little bit about the prior due dates, which really is kind of a run-up to a discussion about the recent litigation, which has been about regional centers that missed paying the integrity fees in prior years. Okay, so the RIA enacted in March of 2022. Under the statute, the integrity fees are due starting October 1 of 2022 for fiscal year 2023. Now, because that date came so quickly on the heels of the statute being enacted, the service extended the due date for that first time the integrity payments were due. And that due date was March 2nd. And so 30 days after that was April 3rd. So that was integrity fee payment year 1. The second integrity fee payment due date was October 1, 2023 of last year for fiscal 2024. And so that was a normal year where the window is open from October 1, 2023 to October 30, 2023. And this is the third year. And we're all paying, regional centers are paying for fiscal 2025. And the window for payment is October 1, 2024 to October 30, 2024. Okay. How do we count the number of investors to determine whether we're paying 20,000 or 10,000? If it's more than 20, then you're in the 20,000 tier. If it's 20 or fewer, then you're in the 10,000 tier. How do you count this? Is this just the investors who came in to the regional center in the prior fiscal year? The answer is no. It's cumulative. And the Federal Register notice answers this question. So it's all of the regional centers investors, including the pre-RIA investors. And the count is those who have filed their 526s to the time of, is this the best way to say it? The I-829 filing. You stop becoming an investor counted for integrity fee purposes once the investor has filed the I-829. Okay, so the Federal Register notice says we, USCIS, are going to start subtracting the I-829s that are filed on or before September 30th of that fiscal year to determine the total number of investors for integrity fee calculation purposes. Okay. All right, so that's the number of investors point. Let me just quickly walk through this example that's given in the Federal Register, because I think it is helpful because it's concrete. If a regional center had 30 associated 526 petitions pre-RIA, 10 associated 526E petitions, and 20 associated I-829 petitions filed on or before September 30th, USCIS would generally estimate that the regional center has a total of 20 investors for integrity fee calculation purposes, because there were 30 investors and then 30 526, then 10 526E investors, and then 20 829 filers. So you subtracted the 20 from the 30 and the 10, and you got 20. And so that regional center would pay the 10,000 because they have 20 or fewer EB5 investors.
Carolyn, what about a regional center that just got their approval and doesn't have any investors yet?
Great question. They would be in the 10,000 tier. It's up to 20.
Yep. So even if you don't have any, you still have to pay that fee.
Yes, you do. Yes, yes. And we had gotten those questions recently.
Mhm.
Great question. Fee payment process. We've gotten a lot of questions about this as well because the portal is open. Go to Pay.Gov. You must. You cannot pay any other way. Go to Pay.Gov. Authorize the person paying must be an authorized individual for the regional center. And the payment methods are valid credit card, debit card, and ACH. There's a maximum of $24,999 from one credit card in one day, and you can't split. If you owe $20,000, you can't put it on multiple cards. What about proof of payment? So this is so important, knowing that we've had notices of intent to terminate for failure to pay the regional center fee. You can print out the receipt from Pay.Gov or proof of payment from whatever method you used. So notice or a statement from the credit card company or the bank that confirms that you've paid. And for good measure, we're also advising clients pay the credit card bill and retain payment records for that as well, for good measure. Okay, let's talk about this litigation. All right, so this year, late spring, USCIS began issuing mass notices of intent to terminate. We don't exactly know how many, but it appears to be around over 100 or so. Right before I went on my family vacation, because I remember I so distinctly. And so this caused quite a bit of chaos in the industry. Some of those regional centers intended not to pay. Many would have paid, but for this confusion about payments and due dates from the prior 2 years. So there was a lawsuit filed June 27 of this year by Northern Rockies Regional Center, suing the director of USCIS and USCIS. And the regional center hadn't paid the regional center integrity fees inadvertently, and it requested the court to enjoin USCIS, so to prohibit USCIS from terminating the regional center and to give the regional center an opportunity to cure, essentially to pay the regional center integrity fee. This was successful, and the judge did enjoin the USCIS and issued the preliminary injunction, barring USCIS from taking action to terminate. And quite recently, by a notice dated September 23rd of this year, there was a notice of administrative development issuing from the court that basically expressed the service's position arising from this litigation, which is essentially that it is reopening the portal to allow late payments for fiscal 2023 and 2024 for those who didn't pay the prior to fiscal year integrity fee payments. So those regional centers can, thanks to this litigation, go into the Pay.Gov portal and make good. Probably just this once, because everywhere is quite clear that after this year, the service will begin to take action to terminate if there's a failure to pay by December 30th. So by December 30th of this year, 2024. This is all in the website now. So one of the practice tips is check and monitor the USCIS websites as we do. You can do a Google search, it'll pop right up. All of this information is at www.uscis.gov/integrity fund. And it talks about accepting delinquent payments. instructions to go to Pay.Gov, what kinds of payments are acceptable, and so forth. Okay, so go there, go to that website.
And Carolyn, will there be penalties and fees associated if we missed a 2023 or 2024 fiscal year payment?
Great question, because the statute talks about a late fee. But no, there won't be, because under the Federal Register notice, the service said, we're gonna figure this out and publish a notice about the reasonable penalty. And until then, there is none.
So right now I just go to the website, pay 2023, 2024, 2025.
Exactly, exactly.
Wonderful.
Yes, yes. All right. So now let's turn to the I-956G, because this is compliance season for regional centers, and it's integrity fees and the G. And in answer to my prior questions and musings, to G or not to G, yes, you G away, you must G. And the G form 956G comes from the RIA subparagraph G, where regional centers are required to file their annual statement. So this is not new, really. Before the RIA, regional centers had to file an annual 924A. Now they're required to file the 956G. And the G has a number of data points tracking the statute to which the regional center certifier must attest. There are sanctions. And whenever I see and think about sanctions, I have in mind vividly the letter that Secretary of DHS Jay Johnson wrote to then chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Senator Grassley, begging him to give DHS statutory authority to do what Senator Grassley wanted the agency to do, which is to rigorously oversee the regional centers and the EB5 regional center program. And now, under the RIA, the agency has the authority that it requested and sanction power. So for regional centers that fail to file their annual certifications, there are graduated sanctions starting from fines to suspension, permanent bar, and termination of the regional center. So we don't want to be in here. No. In addition, the G forms must also be made available to investors. They're not going to have access to all of the attachment ones relating to NCEs that they didn't invest in, but they will have the right to inspect the Form 956G with the portion that is relevant to them, which would be the main portion, I would say, and the attachment one relevant to their NCE. When is this due? It is due by December 29th of every year. Every year, it doesn't change. This year, the 29th is a Sunday. So technically, under general due date regulations, it would be due by the Monday, the 30th. However, this is not our recommendation, of course, would be to not file by the 30th, but to file by the weekday before the 29th, which is Friday, the 27th. And so you wanted to reach the service by the 27th. So it means, filing no later than the Thursday, the 28th. So this is going to be an interesting holiday season for us, as usual. And at some point for our office, we will publish we must have everything in by this time period to get the filing in on time. A couple of technical notes. There have been some updates to the form, so be sure to use the form that has the edition date of April 1, 2024. The reporting fiscal period is for fiscal 2024, ending September 30th, 2024. So fundamental concept. Federal fiscal years start from October 1 and it ends September 30th of the following year. And the fiscal year is labeled by the ending year. So we are in fiscal 2025 that started October 1, 2024, and will end September 30, 2025. We're in fiscal 2025. And you are paying integrity fees for fiscal 2025, but reporting the 956G for fiscal 2024 that ended September 30th. Attachment 1 for each NCE. So it is clear we've got to file the attachment 1 for every NCE under regional center sponsorship. The key is consistency with the record of that NCE. So, for example, you file the 956F for an NCE that the regional center is reporting on an attachment 1 in the G. You're looking to report the same information, assuming that the information is still the same. And if it's not the same, even, basic things like mailing address, which, changes regularly over time, you'll want to note that this is a change in the mailing address of the JCE or the NCE or the contact person. Okay. It's an opportunity to, practice really good reporting hygiene. One specific tip here about the aggregate amount of capital invested by investors in that particular NCE on the attachment 1, because this is a question we get a lot. Well, what are we reporting, especially for older ones where there's been the capital raise, it's been deployed, it's been repaid, it's been redeployed, and some investors have withdrawn or been redeemed. You want to capture the entire history of it, from the peak of all of the investment in to the use in execution, confirming, to redeployment, to repayment. So you're capturing every node in the life of that aggregated investor capital. So complete reporting. I'm ready to cover some compliance pointers. Yeah. Okay. So, and many of these we've covered already in the course of our talk. Subscribe to USCIS notices, and it's great to have all of your team members subscribe. Go to uscis.gov/news/alerts. You put in your email. Our team members are subscribers, and as we get alerts, we'll circulate them and share and talk about them. They become topics for action items and meetings. So subscribe. Go to USCIS websites, and we do this regularly. We take nothing for granted because information can change about filing locations, filing instructions. So make a habit of visiting USCIS websites regularly. Understanding fiscal year nomenclature that we just went over. This is going to be ever so helpful. And you might have to tell yourself as you read this material over and over, we're in fiscal 2025 because we're in the year that ends September 30, 2025. Okay. New regional center IDs, use them. We sent out an alert about this. Regional centers got emails from IPO. You got paper notices before that. You've been getting them on your receipts. Use RCIDs in your payments of integrity fees in all of your filings with USCIS. You have a pre-RIA number that began RCW or RCID. Now you have an RIA RCID number beginning with the prefix RC. Do not put any space in between RC and the numbers that follow, and use that number in everything. Calendar, these are annual dates calendar. calendar annual due dates for integrity fees, October 1 to October 30th, October 30th inclusive. October 31, you're late. Calendar annual due dates for the 956G. It's by December 29th, wherever that falls in a particular year. Consistency. You want consistency across all of your filings in the records, and you can see how they tie, because the service is going to subtract out the number of your 829s. So when you're reporting the number of investors in the capital and state of deployment, you want all of that to match. Monitor your compliance records on a quarterly basis and do an internal audit, sort of do a dress rehearsal of an audit as well. Something that it's going to be an undertaking that you'll have to prep for, but it's very good practice to do. I will end with our compliance support services. They're very simple. The first is calendaring, because it's all about monitoring these due dates. And our annual calendaring service will just ping you on these due dates. Very simple. You can do it as well. Next, we have an annual certifications baseline review, which is what we do when we're asked to do diligence on regional centers for acquisition, for example, or regional center due diligence generally, just a baseline. What is your annual filing history? Going back to 924As, did you file them regularly, annually as required? Do you have the receipts? Have you been filing your Gs? What is the status of your regional center operations? How are you keeping track of the aggregate investor capital across all of your NCEs? How are you working with your operating manual? You know, everyone submits a very hefty operating manual. You are expected to follow those steps, because if you don't, that could be a ground for filing for finding non-compliance according to the language in the statute for G. And then there's more aggressive review, the quarterly annual reviews for each NCE in anticipation of the attachment 1 reporting. So these will go into the NCEs, JCEs, study the 956F that's on record, the aggregate investor capital, and in sort of checklist and questionnaire fashion, quarter by quarter, collect the answers, ask them again and again and again, and see if there are any changes. So this is intended to be a low boil way to just keep track of the NCEs and any changes that may be in the works in your filed Fs.
Great. We do have a question for you, Carolyn.
All right, let's do it.
Just back to the integrity fees. We have a question that says, I understand the portal has been open for fiscal year 23 and 24 integrity fund payments, but I missed how a regional center's lack of paying the October 2022 integrity fund contribution can be cured. Oh, and then just responded, I guess technically that was the fiscal year 23.
Exactly. Yes, precisely. That's right. That's exactly right. That's the payment that was due in March to April of 23. And you can pay that as well.
Wonderful. So far, that's the only question we have in the chat.
All right. Well, I think the presentation must have been quite comprehensive in coverage.
Was.
Okay, wonderful. Well, everyone, happy compliance season. Good luck with everything. And if you have any questions, give a shout out. Lindsay, thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.